As the old saying goes, there's a fine line between genius and insanity. From Beethoven to Van Gogh to Virginia Woolf, the influence of mental illness on some of history's most famous artists has been well documented, even if little understood. I'm Anne-Marie Fertoli, and this is The Beauty of Madness, the art of the mentally ill. We'll meet a community of artists in New York City who are reinventing themselves through their art. The Living Museum, a facility for the mentally ill in Queens Village, New York. The museum is part of the Creedmoor Psychiatric Center. Here, diagnostic labels are relatively non-existent. The mission of the museum is to get patients to move beyond the label and the stigma of mental illness and to create new identities defined by their lives as artists. In fact, at the Living Museum, that fine line between genius and insanity doesn't just blur, it all but disappears. Today, nearly 100 artists, mostly outpatients, come to the museum regularly. Some are inpatients at Creedmoor's main facility.
My name is Issa Ibrahim. I'm 41 years old, and I'm a patient here at Creedmoor Psychiatric Center. I come to the Living Museum. It's a program that I come to 4 days a week, all day. And it's saved my life, it's enriched my life, it's changed my life. It's a fabulous place.
Issa is one of the museum's most prolific artists.
I vacillate between different styles, really. Whenever I get bored of one, I can very easily move into another, which is good. I really enjoy that. And then when I'm bored of painting altogether, I write songs and play music, or I'll even write short stories or keep my journal, which is turning into a memoir. I'm fortunate, really, to be able to work in different media.
This is one of Issa's songs. He calls it Funky Junkie.
I'm a funky junkie, lived life on the skids. A two-bit kid, ridden out of town on the rail. Born to fail, but look at me now.
Issa's workspace is filled with art, from oil paintings to large-scale illustrations. Much of his work includes pop culture references. One painting features the heads of the Beatles transposed onto Mount Rushmore. Another, The Last Supper, with former President Nixon, Van Gogh, and Mickey Mouse.
I've taken a lot of popular culture, and I kind of put a little spin on it whenever I work in that area. Turning a light on it and maybe exposing the frivolous and ridiculousness of it all. It's even reached a fever pitch now with American Idol and Britney Spears. It's just out of control, really. Superman with a beer can languishing on his couch and whatever. That was maybe 10, 12 years ago. And things were kind of outrageous then, but now it's even worse. So I feel like there's nothing I can really do to comment on it because it's already there. But I do like to comment on history, popular culture. I do a lot of black history.
Issa says artistic talent is in his genes. Both of his parents were artists, and he dedicates all of his work to them. But he says he takes his influences from everywhere.
Pop art of the 60s, Lichtenstein and Warhol. Not so much Warhol, his idea more so than his actual work. But definitely Lichtenstein with the cartoon, a comic book type thing, which I kind of work on. The Fluxus people from the early 60s, as well as the old masters. I mean, you can't take anything away from them.
Issa says he's also inspired by the other artists at the Living Museum. Many of the artists here have at some point lived in the locked wards of Creedmoor. But Living Museum director Dr. Janos Marton says he doesn't really pay attention to those charts.
I am not really into diagnosing people. In fact, after a quarter century in the mental health system, I gave up altogether thinking about diagnosis too much. Mostly because everybody's history is very similar. They are all very traumatic histories. You can almost say that everybody suffers of post-traumatic stress disorder just to the very fact that they have mental illness. Having said that, everybody here has a severe chronic mental illness. That's what brings you to a hospital like Creedmoor. So at one point everybody had a psychotic breakdown. By psychosis I mean that at one point you are deemed dangerous to yourself or to others.
But with the advent of psychotropic drugs and even more recent medical developments, Dr. Marton says many of the artists at the Living Museum are stabilized and are able to live their lives relatively free of the worst symptoms.
You find less and less people with florid psychotic behavior. Most people who come here are doing very well, and many of them are completely free of symptoms. That is a very important thing to understand, that with people being able to function very well and we are stabilized, now the next stage has to happen, which is you have to regain your identity. And this is the goal that we have here at the museum.
Artist Issa Ibrahim says working at the Living Museum has helped him through the tougher times.
17 years ago, I suffered a psychotic breakdown. I was smoking pot and it kicked down a wall in my brain that's yet to be repaired. It's repaired through medication, but not really repaired. It's just kind of papered over a little. The insanity is still there, but it's just I'm medicated well. Years ago, I would work out a lot of my issues, the substance abuse issues. I'm clean now for 15 years. I feel good about that. But just working out the cravings that used to come up, the euphoria that you missed, the self-loathing of being an addict, and then also the stigma of being mentally ill and being an outsider. I've worked a lot of those issues out in my work.
Now, Issa says he can see that work in a different light.
There was a period that was very obvious in my work, and I would think, okay, mental illness now, or drugs, yes. But now it's much more subtle. It creeps up on me without my even knowing, but it's not as obvious, I don't think. But some of those early works were good. Not all of them, but some of them really are strong, because they really hit me where it hurts, because it's my issues.
Issa is currently illustrating a novella he calls The Cosmic Knockout, a story he came up with while he was coming off medication following a mental breakdown 8 years ago. He talks about his novella during a typical day at the Living Museum, as other artists practice their music nearby.
They're pretty wild illustrations, but it's a pretty wild story. It's kind of like love behind the walls of a mental hospital, and how the protagonists, the main people in the story, are sick, and so they think they're superheroes, but then something transpires within the story which allows them to become superheroes, but you're not sure until the very end whether they are or they aren't. So it plays with perception and reality a little bit.
For museum director Dr. Janos Marton, the existence of the museum in its current form is a miracle of sorts.
We have quite an ideal situation going. We are incredibly blessed with creativity here and then a huge output of fantastic art. And I think that most people are very happy here, including myself.
For many of the artists working here, including Issa Ibrahim, the Living Museum provides a refuge.
It's bittersweet, the situation I'm in. It's like I'm hospitalized, and yet I go to this oasis. I come up from a dungeon and go out to a beach, in a way, every day. So to come here every day and paint and sing songs with friends who like to sing with you, and write songs with people, and be able to write ideas that you're not afraid to say. But wherever I end up, I'll always be coming here, for as long as it's here. And I hope it'll be here forever, or for as long as I'm alive.
After over 20 years of running the place, Dr. Marton says he's convinced the Living Museum is an experimental model proven effective. His hope is for other facilities around the world to adopt similar models.
There's a historical moment right now because the fact that medication is so much better now. You can have the hospital shrinking down to a smaller size, but epidemiologically the number of people who have mental illness remains the same, and they are going to be discharged into outpatient facilities, into adult homes, and sort of 24/7 facilities, and they should be adopting these open studio projects. I think that is a solution. Art is the solution.
The Beauty of Madness, The Art of the Mentally Ill is a production of WFUV News at Fordham University in New York. It was written and produced by me, Anne-Marie Fertoli, and edited by George Bodarky. My thanks to everyone at the Living Museum. We now leave you with a song by artist Issa Ibrahim. It's called We're All Crazy. Thanks for listening.
Schizophrenic, borderline, so pedantic, spill the wine.